If this isn't excellent justification why people are calling for a national inquiry into the operation of grooming gangs around the UK over many decades, then I'm not sure what is. And it starts with this. The Home Office, reportedly, is refusing to publish the figures for the number of grooming gang members that have been deported. Those are those that have been prosecuted, been convicted, sent to prison, and then had citizenship revoked and been the subject of a deportation order. And therefore the Home Office should have figures of each and every person who has been through that process and subject to a deportation order and actually been deported. So welcome back. I am Daniel Shensmith, a barrister of England and Wales, and I am completely independent of the media, of everybody else, and I'm not a Crown employee as some people seem to think I am. And if you would like a fresh, balanced, neutral approach, spelling things out exactly as they are, then please do subscribe to the channel. I am soaring towards 700,000 subscribers and hopefully 1 million and beyond, and I need your help to get there because I depend on you, the viewer. So calling it as it is, and I shall sometimes refer to news articles from the Telegraph, the Daily Mail, which I shall endeavour to remember to link in the description below, but I'll also refer to tribunal decisions so you can understand the full legal case behind some of these stories. But beginning with this one, the Home Office refuses to publish groomer deportations data. I'm going to come back to some reasoning that they put in here as to why these people have not been deported in a moment. But suffice to say here, it says the department, the Home Office, has declined to put the figures in the public domain despite the outcry over child exploitation and the demands for a fresh state-backed inquiry. There's another subject here about Nigel Farage saying that they are going to do their own inquiry. If you want me to talk about that, do comment below. But as to the deportation data and why that is so important is because of stories like this one. Kari Abdul Rauf, pictured here, was convicted of child sex offences and was ordered to be deported 10 years ago. And as of last year, it's reported that he's still here, some 9 years later, or 10 years later, if he is actually still here in the UK. Reportedly, he was the father of 5, worked as a taxi driver and a Muslim preacher. He was among 9 Asian men found guilty of sex offences against vulnerable girls in 2012, and he received a 6-year jail sentence. But he was released just 2.5 years later and then ordered to be deported. So the tribunal decision here was one of the reasons that this dragged on for so long. Now, we know that he also had the benefit of legal aid. Now, I'm not against legal aid entirely, but I think it's a public justice system, so you ought to know, you are entitled to know that he had the benefit of legal aid to fight the decision to deport him. And so this appeal itself, this was the final appeal, this was delayed itself on issues in relation to the grant of legal aid. The hearing reconvened on the 9th of June 2023 and proceeded to a conclusion. The conclusion was that his appeal was dismissed, and so the deportation order stands, but as of last year, he was still here. I don't know if that's still the case or not. The newspapers haven't reported that yet, and obviously I don't know. But this reports the factual background as follows. So he was born in Pakistan and entered the UK as an adult. He was naturalised as a British citizen in November 2004. In June 2012, he was sentenced for conspiracy to engage in sexual activities with a child and trafficking for exploitation of a 15-year-old girl. The total sentence was 6 years imprisonment, coupled with being placed on the sex offenders register for an indefinite period. In July 2015, he was given notice of the intention to deprive him of citizenship. Following which, in December 2015, he was served with a notice of the decision to deprive him of citizenship. Then he appealed to the first-tier tribunal, who dismissed the appeal in April 2016. Ultimately, via an appeal by the upper tribunal, the matter progressed to the Court of Appeal, who dismissed his appeal on the 8th of August 2018. But before that, the order depriving him of citizenship was signed. He was served with the deprivation order on 18th of July 2018. On the 12th of September 2018, he was issued a letter with a decision to deport him. Then on the 24th of September 2018 still, he purported to renounce his Pakistani citizenship. Subsequently, on the 28th of October 2019, he attended an interview with the Pakistan government officials. On the 3rd of March 2020, he was served a decision to make a deportation order replacing the earlier decision on the 12th of September 2018. On the 23rd of March 2020, he submitted representations on the basis of Article 8, those being respect for private and family life. Those representations were rejected in July 2020, and this is the decision which is the subject matter of this tribunal decision that I'm reading now. And again, under this decision that I'm discussing now, he contended that the decision to deport him was unlawful as a result of a breach of his human rights. But long story short, the appeal was dismissed and therefore the deportation order stood. However, as it's reported, he was still here last year and may still be here now, with people in the street saying that they see him walking up and down past their house, past their children, etc. Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp, quoted in the Daily Mail, said here, "Governments have been trying to deport these perpetrators for years, including stripping them of citizenship where possible. If their original home country does not take them back, we should look at reducing or stopping visas to nationals of those countries. I expect the countries concerned will then rapidly reconsider their position." In other words, to unravel that a little bit, the reason that they are struggling to deport them is their home countries will not take them back. Because they've renounced citizenship, and therefore the receiving country will just say, well, they are no longer a citizen of our country, or whatever the reason is, they won't take them back, and therefore the UK is struggling to deport them anywhere else. He goes on, the Home Office insists that it will do everything to ensure serious foreign offenders are deported, but has declined to reveal the specific figures for convicted groomers. Former Home Secretary Suella Braverman also called for zero tolerance approach to the deportation of foreign sex offenders, etc. She said we need to have a zero tolerance approach when it comes to deporting these foreign criminals who have been found guilty of these heinous crimes. And I absolutely agree. And I don't think for a moment that there are many people around the UK that think that's wrong, that we should be deporting foreign criminals that have had their citizenship revoked, they're the subject of a deportation order, and that there needs to be a firm standing with those countries that refuse to take them back. And so if they don't take them back, as is suggested by Chris Philps here, maybe we should stop issuing visas to those from those countries, and then it should elicit some kind of cooperation, because in this situation it is absolutely necessary that we stand firm and apply our laws as they are written. Coming full circle, the reason that this is such a serious issue and supports the calling of an inquiry here is the Home Office is refusing to publish figures for the number of gang members that have been deported. Being somewhat cynical, I'm a lawyer, so I'm allowed to be cynical, and I very often am cynical as a lawyer, both as an individual and as a lawyer. Being cynical, I think the Home Office is refusing to publish those figures because there'll be an absolute outcry if those numbers are staggeringly low to what you might expect, and it might make the Home Office look like it isn't really doing its job. I hope that's not the case. I hope that the statistics reflect a robust application of the law, and when someone is subject of a deportation order, that they are in fact deported. But I suspect, cynically, that that probably is the case, because if the Home Office is refusing to publish those figures, the big question is why? Why is it refusing to publish those figures? And just last week, remember, as is blown up on social media, it's refused to launch a public inquiry into the gangs and everything else. There has been an inquiry. I'm not going into great depth into that inquiry just yet because I haven't read it all and I haven't researched it all, but suffice to say, my understanding at the moment is that there are lots of areas that it didn't look at, that it needs to look at, and that people are calling it to do just that. And just to preempt, before I get critical comments in the comments, this isn't just about the Labour government, this is successive governments. As a Home Office source said to the Telegraph here, as you would expect, the government explores all avenues to pursue removal of foreign criminals, including Pakistan. It is completely unforgivable that the Tories' deportation of these foreign criminals dropped by 20%, and in April 2022, the National and Borders Act was given royal assent. The Conservatives seem to have forgotten that it was their legislation, and it's interesting that they've only remembered this now. But what's also interesting is that they say that these deportations have dropped by 20%, so they obviously have the figures. I mean, it would be silly to suggest that they don't have the figures, but if they do have the figures, why not make them public, unless their aim is to stop people talking about it, stop people getting upset about it. But after all, keeping people in the dark about it, not telling people the information, is not really the way to go about things. Open and transparent government is the best way of doing things, even if those numbers are bad. After all, if it's numbers left by a previous government, they are more than willing to share them, as we've known in the last few months. So I, for one, suggest that these figures should be published. They should be public figures. People do have a right to know exactly what's going on or not going on, as the case may be. And it's not as if all of this is new either, because this has been reported for years. This from the Telegraph as well, almost a year ago, the 23rd of January 2024, again about Kari Abdul Rauf, was ordered to be deported nearly 9 years ago, it reported, but still here. And again, it reports that while his British citizenship's been revoked, he argues that he's renounced his Pakistani citizenship, arguing that he's now stateless. And it's been reported that Pakistan has refused to receive him, who's been pictured in Rochdale living with his family, and much to the anger and frustration of people living in the town, the victims in the town having to live nearby, and people knowing who he is and where he is and seeing him walk past their houses and, of course, their children. So it's no surprise that people are outraged by these kind of stories, because this is where sometimes I'm asked about the law and some people say the law doesn't work. And this, I dare say it, even as a lawyer, I have to say this is an example of where the law fails, because there is a process, there's a procedure, there are courts. I am not blaming the courts for their decisions. The courts are doing their bit, their job. They have made the orders. In fact, speaking of the judges, it occurred to me whilst I was editing this that I recalled the judges commenting on this case, and I was right. So forgive the change in layout in the room. I'm standing up now. I stand up to edit sometimes. This story here, again in the Telegraph, it says here, Mr. Justice Bernard McCloskey accused taxpayer-funded lawyers representing the gang of treating the immigration tribunal, which will decide whether they should be allowed to remain in Britain, with sustained and marked disrespect, saying there have been multiple recent examples of similar conduct and misconduct, arguing that these criminals were adopting a strategy of time wasting and obstructing the courts in an attempt to put off any possible deportation from the UK as long as possible. And it appears to me that that's absolutely successful, and that's exactly what's happened. And that was also in respect of this same chap here. So I thought I'd slot that in. They have refused the appeals. Every step has been followed properly, but the problem here is, because that has taken so much time, and because they are now left in a bit of a stalemate, Pakistan won't take this guy back, yet he's subject to a deportation order but renounced his citizenship. So where do they put him? Where do they take him? Physically, logistically, pragmatically, what do they do and where do they take him? If he's subject to a deportation order, they need to do something. And so how many people, here's the question, how many people are in that category that make up these statistics that are failed deportation orders that this Home Office is refusing to release? And when I say the Home Office, I mean the collective Home Office, both present and previous governments, because these are statistics that the public have a right to know. So let me know what you think respectfully in the comments section. Please do not be stirring up any hatred down there, or you too might be reported for your own comments. But as always, if you like a brutally honest approach to the law and what's going on, which this is, I am saying it exactly as it is. That was the tribunal case decision. His appeal was dismissed on the 7th of August 2023, but he was reported to still be there a year later, so some 9 years after all of this blew up. So let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. Do subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.